Hi, everybody. Today is Friday, March 21st, 2025, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
I'm here. I keep trying to wear out my welcome, but you won't let me.
Larry, let's get started with this situation between Israel and Palestinians. Israel is putting the blame on Palestinians that they didn't do what was in the ceasefire, in those agreements that they've done and considering the ceasefire. And Hamas is saying that they're not honest in the way that they're picturing what's going on. Here is what one
Mhm.
of the Israeli is he's a former Israeli intelligence officer. He said that he's a journalist as well. I said ceasefire didn't collapse. It was collapsed by the Israeli government.
Yeah.
And what is going on? What is your understanding of what's going on right now between Israel and Palestinians?
Well, they're coordinating with the Trump administration. I think several of us were held out hopes 60 days ago that Donald Trump was sincere about wanting to be the peace president. And to that end, by sending Steve Witkoff to coerce Bibi Netanyahu into accepting the ceasefire plan, I thought we were really starting to see something that would be a profound change of policy in the Middle East. Well, we were wrong. Uh, Trump is, he's the prison bitch of APAC. He might as well have a collar around his neck. They call him to come over and lick their feet. He goes over and licks their feet. Whatever they ask for, he does. And so they want to destroy the Palestinians. Trump says, okay, let me help you do that. And I'll send you 2,000-pound bombs. And we'll also go ahead and start attacking Yemen. And we're going to use the attack on Yemen as a predicate to come up with an excuse to attack Iran. Trump's committing political suicide. There's no other way to describe it. He thinks that we've got enough military might and power to frighten the Yemenis, coerce and bully the Iranians, and that the Israelis be free to murder all the Palestinians. And this is the war. The chances of this exploding into a much broader war is very high.
Before getting to that, Larry, do you think that Donald Trump, the way that he's behaving, the in the in terms of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, is he trying to improve the position of Netanyahu in Israel?
No, it's not so much trying to improve the position. He's just doing what the Zionists want. He's completely sold out to them. It's sickening and disgusting. And not only him, hell, Tulsi Gabbard. You had it on your show the other day. I think when you had Ray McGovern and John Helmer, and you showed her, good God, the volte-face, the complete 180, or as Annalena Baerbock calls it, the 360, but a complete reversal of position of what she once held. So this is alarming because it's all based on lies, and instead of looking for a peaceful way to solve the issues that are out there, they're opting for war, and it's a war the United States cannot win.
Larry, in terms of Yemenis, how successful were the strikes on Yemenis so far? Is that different from what the Biden administration was doing during
No,
his
not at all different. Look, part of what the Biden administration ran into is when you send a carrier strike group into the Red Sea, it's got to be accompanied by, a couple of destroyers and a cruiser. And each of those ships has on board what are called vertical launch systems, VLS. This is an anti-missile defense system. So any ballistic missiles, any cruise missiles, any drones that are fired at the carrier or the accompanying ships, they'll fire those missiles off. Well, a couple of problems with that. Number one, like on the destroyer, it's usually 96 cells. So think of 96 tubes. Once you fire off those 96, you're out of ammunition, and they don't have them on board the ship where they can just go drop another one in and continue. No. They have to actually go to a port and be refitted, resupplied. So that means if the Houthis decide to launch 20 missiles a day, and the ships, usually when they're firing to make sure they bring the missile down, they'll fire 2, maybe 3. So let's say they're firing 3 missiles for every inbound missile. They fire 20, that's 60. Well, wait a second. They only got 96 of these on deck. So right away, in one shot, they've expended 50% of their ammunition. And you know what? Those missiles that go into those the vertical launch system, as of 2018, there were only like 660 of them. So it's not like they were making a whole bunch and that there's unlimited supply. There isn't. So the Houthis basically can use cheap drones that, maybe cost $5,000 or less, fire them at the U.S. ships, and they've got to use $1 million, $2 million missiles to try to fend off, a $5,000 drone. And on top of it, then once they start to run out, and then there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to resupply. I mean, this is, again, Trump and his team didn't think this through. And that's why, remember, they were all on last Tuesday, it was, look at us, we bad, we killing, they're really pounding the chest. Well, you don't see that today because they're running up against the fact that there are limitations to U.S. military power. So this will, the odds are that within the next week or two, they're going to have to pull the Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group from the Red Sea without accomplishing their mission, so that they have to go back and refit, reload, and then maybe they'll come back and try it again. They're not going to defeat the Houthis in Yemen. They're not going to do it.
Larry, it's unbelievable why he didn't try to force Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire, at least to get along with with those articles within the ceasefire. Instead, he has decided to go fight the Yemenis, which they knew what's going on in the Red Sea and what they're going to face in the Red Sea.
Well, the United States is held hostage by Iran. I mean, they got their hooks in us. The money that came from Miriam Adelson, the money that
Even by Israel.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, it's just, we're completely beholden to the Zionists. No independence, and it's Republican, Democrat alike. I really thought that Trump had a chance to be independent because he's not going to be up for re-election. But no, he sold his soul to the devil. And so the Israelis are calling the shots. Now, it's true that Netanyahu's got some domestic political problems of his own. And even all this U.S. support doesn't make those go away. And there are indications that this, Israel could tear itself apart. This Zionist vision, this belief that, this is the last days, and if we do the right things, the Messiah will come. Now, notice the Jews believe the Messiah hasn't come. The evangelical Christians that are supporting Israel believe the Messiah has come. So you got a difference right there. But all of this is based upon, the Old Testament of the Bible, which is Christians and Jews revere as holy, and I think it's wholly made up. It's a book written by Jews in exile to sort of explain why they are what they are, and they say, "Hey, God said we're special, and God says we get to kill you, and God says we get everything, and God, and it's all based on a lie. It's a fabrication."
Donald Trump asked, we've learned that he asked Senate for permission to attack Iran. And do you think he's serious in this sort of, because
he's serious, Nima? He's serious as a heart attack, dude. I mean, this is absolute crazy, but they're going to do it. So we just better buckle, batten on the hatches, as they say, because this is going to get ugly.
what do they want to achieve? Just striking Iran and from the air, and what would happen then? What would be the outcome for them? What would be the gain for the United States, for Israel?
Well, again, they base it upon some false assumptions. Their assumption number one is that Iran is weak. Iran doesn't have any effective air defense, and that the United States can just roll in there with its bombers and blow up these Iranian nuclear sites. And Iran is out building nuclear weapons. They are not. But it doesn't matter what the objective fact is. They've constructed a narrative, and they're going to pursue that narrative. And the narrative is that Iran is the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the world, that Iran is building a nuclear weapon and has to be stopped. Again, a lie. But they're going to roll in, and a bunch of U.S. aircraft will probably get shot down. And the missiles that the U.S. fires at the Iranian sites will be intercepted. And then Iran's going to turn around and fire missiles at U.S. bases, particularly Al Udeid in Qatar. And once they wipe that out, then all of a sudden the United States is going to be faced with casualties, damage to infrastructure. There's also a major operations center at Qatar that controls all U.S. military air operations in the region. That could be destroyed, attacked and destroyed. So, and then if the United States also includes hitting installations, Iran will turn around and blow up the Saudi oil fields, set them on fire. So all of a sudden, the world is going to be in a dramatic oil shortage. There'll be a tremendous inflationary spike and a contraction in industry. This is catastrophic, and haven't even gotten into the possibility that Russia and China could enter that war, because this would have been an unprovoked attack on Iran, and Russia has signed an agreement with Iran that basically says, if you're attacked, in an unprovoked manner, we'll come to your aid. That's what the agreement says.
Larry, do you find, how did you find the response coming from Iran and the way that Iran is talking about it? That Supreme Leader was talking about it. The Iranian president is responding to Donald Trump. The key point in the way that they're responding, that you cannot put pressure on us and ask for negotiation. And it doesn't seem that would resonate with the Trump administration. The question, if I were thinking on the part of the Iranian government, what would resonate with this new administration? What do they want to do?
You mean the Iranians or the Americans?
Yeah, Iranian. If I were one of the Iranian leadership, in just seeing what the United States is doing, putting a lot of pressure on Iran, and at the same time asking to go after negotiations, it doesn't make sense for them. They don't go. We had, Larry, by the way, let's get back to JCPOA, if you remember those days.
Right.
Obama decided to ease the sanctions, to ease the situation between the United States and Iran, to go and do some sort of negotiations with Iran, and JCPOA came out of that. We know that this doesn't work. This sort of attitude doesn't work with Iran. And the question would be, are they going to change their behavior? Is there anybody in the Trump administration to accept that, to understand that?
No. Look, there is no interest on the Trump side of actually negotiating a deal with Iran. They are presenting a lie, a narrative to the public about Iran as an unrepentant supporter of terrorism. They point to Yemen as case in point, and that Iran is working on the verge of creating a nuclear weapon. And as such, they need to be destroyed. They need to be stopped. Trump's going to do it. You know, if you'd asked me 4 weeks ago, I'd say, no, I would have given it a low probability, but not now. Trump's going to do it. And he's going to piss away his presidency. It's his own fault. He can't blame the deep state. He can't blame the Democrats. He can't blame lawfare. He did this to himself. You know, his ideological commitment to the crazed Zionists is going to be the death of his presidency.
Do you see the main goal would be just cutting Iran from supplying and supporting Yemenis or other groups, Hezbollah, other groups, or is the main goal is Iran? The main
goal is Iran. These other groups, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, they're excuses. That's the thing to understand. They're excuses. They're not. It's not the real reason. Because again, peel back. The Houthis and the Houthis have been, they haven't been active in doing quote terrorism. They've been fighting a war. They've been attacked by the West. The West has been using Saudis as a proxy, or actually, giving the Saudis weaponry and then putting in foreign mercenaries to carry out attacks. The Saudis don't even have a national army worth a cup of warm spit. So this is all about taking out Iran. This is 45, 46 years after Iran, the rise of the Ayatollah Khomeini, and the takeover of the U.S. Embassy. This is payback. That's all this is.
They're talking about that Iran is 2 weeks away from getting a nuclear bomb, getting nukes. If they attack Iran, and do you think that Iran would change its strategy in terms of nuclear weapons?
If they attack Iran, Iran is first and foremost going to carry out attacks on U.S. targets in the region. What happens in response to those, if the United States responds to that and things escalate, like I said, this could get out of hand because it'll bring Russia in. But when the dust finally settles, I think then at that point, Iran will have come to the conclusion that we need to have nukes. But right now, they don't. And the Ayatollah Khamenei has maintained the fatwa against it. So, Iran's actually not creating a nuke, but the United States is using the fear that is as a justification for attacking Iran.
Is Iran capable of, in terms of the United States being successful in attacking Iranian nuclear facilities, are they going to be able to hit back Israeli facilities, nuclear facilities?
Yes. I mean, Iran has already demonstrated that it has a very capable missile system, and it can defeat. It has maneuverable hypersonic warheads, and it can defeat the Israeli air defense systems. So yeah, I think that's what we're looking at here. Is this can get out of hand? It's not going to be a controlled response, and that I find so disturbing about this.
How about Yemen? Do you see the way that Yemen is fighting? Are they gonna back down? Are they gonna give up on fighting with Israel? Because we've
No,
seen that they have been hitting the targets in Israel, in Tel Aviv.
yeah, they're not backing down. I mean, good God, did anybody pay it from December of 2023 when uh, the Lloyd Austin, then Secretary of Defense, did not announced Operation Prosperity Guardian until January 19th, 2025. So that's, almost 14 months. Yemen didn't give up. Yeah, and we bombed them frequently as much as we could. We didn't carry it out every day because, frankly, if we did it every day, we'd run out of bombs. Maybe that would be the thing that the Yemenis should encourage the United States to do. Yeah, keep bombing us, baby, and run out, exhaust your supply. That would be good news for the Palestinians, because the U.S. wouldn't have any more to give Israel to murder women and children.
In terms of Iran, Larry, what are the main objectives of the negotiations beyond that JCPOA that Donald Trump has decided to withdraw from?
Well,
what are the objectives of the Trump administration in terms of having negotiations with Iran?
But there are no negotiations. They're not
No,
interested.
If we assume that they have something in their mind in
But
terms
they don't.
of
Name it. Let's not talk fantasy. They don't. They're not interested. The Trump administration is not interested in negotiation. I mean, in theory, they'd say, "Oh yeah, we want to negotiate an end to Iran's nuclear weapons program." Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. How do you negotiate an end to something that doesn't exist? Iran's already said, "Hey, we don't have it." The Russians have told the United States, "Hey, they don't have it." And the United States continues to insist, like Netanyahu, that they have it. I mean, this is insanity, is what we're dealing with. So, I wish, you're not off base to hope that there would be some rational thinking, saying, okay, this can be, there's a way we can find a way to negotiate to at least give assurances to the West. What the United States wants Iran to do is agree to stop doing anything on the nuclear front and to cut off all aid to Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran's not going to do that. Iran said, no, we're going to continue to provide assistance to Hamas and Hezbollah because they're fighting for the human rights of Palestinian people. And so we'll stand up for that. They're not going to give it up. In fact, Lavrov had a conversation with Marco Rubio day before yesterday, and he said that very same thing to him. He said, look, you need to separate the nuclear issue from talking to Iran about support for Hamas and Hezbollah. Two different things. You need to keep those separate. The U.S. is trying to link it. Iran's not going to accept it. And that's why we're going to war. I'm warning everybody, this is going to turn hot. And when it does, the United States' assumptions about its military prowess are going to be exposed. Our weaknesses will be exposed. And America is going to pay a terrible price. Iran, too. I mean, Iran's going to suffer, significant, not massive casualties. It's just, it's evil. It's absolute evil.
I can assume that the Arab states all of them would be all decimated and destroyed by this attack, by this fight between the United States and Iran.
No, they're not going to do anything about it, probably. They just sit back and watch. The only country right now that's doing anything to try to stop the Israelis from killing Palestinians is Yemen, with the leadership of the Houthis. I mean, it's shameful, very shameful.
It's so unfortunate to see how that peace plan on the part of Egypt is failing, and they couldn't achieve anything together with other Arab states. And it doesn't seem that the United States care about them, then is willing to understand what they're talking about.
No, the United States is self-absorbed. We only care about ourselves. If is it in our interest, fine, we'll do it, regardless of what it means for another country, regardless of whether it hurts them, harms them. We don't care. That should be clear to people by now.
The only reason, Larry, that can come to my mind is that the case of China, because the security of energy is so important for China. If you make huge chaos in the Middle East, that would influence China in a long run.
Yeah,
that would influence Russia in a long run. The question would be, are they going to get involved in something happens in the Middle East? Because they're totally connected with what's going on in the Middle East. They're dependent on what's going on in the Middle East. I'm talking about China.
Yeah, China is, Russia isn't. If nothing else, if the disruption of oil out of the Middle East will make China even more dependent on Russia. But that's why we've seen since 2019, Russia and China conduct an annual joint naval military exercise with Iran. They're working with the Iranian military to say, hey, we support you, and maybe even will come to fight on your behalf. So that's another variable that the United States, I think, is failing to take into consideration as they pull together their plans to launch these attacks on Iran. There was some illusion that Trump was trying to convince Putin not to intervene in Iran, but Lavrov had that conversation with Rubio and basically told him, keep your damn hands off. Leave them alone. Yeah, we support negotiations, but threatening them and going to war, because if that happens, Russia very well could get involved, and then the United States is fighting a global war that would become thermonuclear, perhaps.
There are two important countries in the Middle East, Iran and Turkey. We know what has happened with the case of Syria. Turkey is right now not that close to Russia because of what has happened in Syria. And Erdogan is not in a good position, by the way, right now. Turkey is suffering from huge protests against Erdogan. But the only key country in the Middle East would be Iran to Russia. And they have their common ground in terms of the security and what's going on with the radical Islam, or Wahhabis, and I don't know, whatever we call them, ISIS, Daesh, and whatever we can call them. Is Russia going to? It's so unbelievable the way that they're talking, because in the media they're talking about Russia is negotiating on the case of Iran with the United States, but we know at the end of the day, Russia would not be interested in any sort of damage happening to Iran. And because
again, that's why Iran signed the agreement, the security agreement with, why Russia signed that security agreement with Iran on January 17th. In it spells, it didn't come out and say directly, if Iran is attacked, we will view it as an attack on Russia. It doesn't say that. It uses more artful diplomatic language, but it says something to the effect that Russia will feel obligated to, help defend Iran if it's attacked attacked in violation of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. So it was sort of a backdoor way of saying, okay, yeah, if you're attacked, we're going to come fight for you and defend you. But prior to that, Russia is going to be supplying electronic warfare and air defense systems and advisors to work with Iran. But Iran's got a pretty healthy capability in its own right. The problem here is the United States is grossly underestimating Iran's ability to defend itself. And when you start off with those kinds of false assumptions, next thing you know, you've gotten yourself in a war that you can't handle. That's where the United States is headed.
When you look at the U.S. Army today, are they going to be able to go on the ground fight in Iran?
No, are you kidding? They got 472,000 to go in and take control of Iran. It's theoretically doable, but you'd probably need an army of at least 2 million men that have to grow 5 times what they are right now. That's not going to happen. So, the United States just has to sit down and recognize what its own military limitations are. It's like I talked earlier with respect to the vertical launch systems on the destroyers and cruisers. The United States is making a finite number of these missiles every year. And when the use rate of those exceeds the production rate, all of a sudden at some point you're going to run out of missiles. Then then it's like having a gun, a semi-automatic pistol with no ammunition in it. What good is it? You can maybe hit somebody with it, but it's not going to function as it's designed to function. And that's what I'm trying to convey here, that if the United States keeps pursuing these kinds of aggressions, the economy is going to end up stop functioning as it's supposed to function, because it will be sapped. Its energy will be sapped from being involved in Ukraine, involved in Gaza, involved with Houthis, and involved with God knows where, China.
Is Donald Trump getting closer to achieve a Ukrainian settlement?
No. He thinks he is, but he's not. He can stop it tomorrow. He can make good on his promise. Hey, I can stop it tomorrow. You know how? Cut off all military assistance, cut off all intelligence sharing, and order the U.S. secret operators that are there with the CIA and the military special operations forces. Order them all back to the United States. Cut it off. End it. That'll bring an end to the war. Because right now the United States is an accomplice, an accessory to murder.
Why did Ukraine attack Russia right after the talks between the United States and Russia? Was that coordinated with the United States? Was that just something on the part of Europeans forcing Ukraine to do that?
Well, they didn't force Ukraine. They helped them, encouraged them to, but it was European. They're doing what they can to sabotage the U.S. attempts to get an agreement with Putin. And for Putin, he just stands back and says, see, this is what I told you about. We said we get an agreement, and then they launch this kind of attack. Now, these, I think some of the Telegram and social media is playing up the attacks as a major violation. So, the Russians are playing some games with that too. They are hyping the attack in order to draw attention to, this is why we're in here to kill these guys. They're not going to slow down on that. That's for sure.
The situation with the United Kingdom is getting easier for the Trump administration, or as time goes by, it makes much more difference between the position of the United States and the one from, for instance, the United Kingdom?
It's not bringing them closer together. Let's put the UK is irrelevant. Okay, the UK is trying to make itself relevant by interfering and helping Russia, helping Ukraine carry out these attacks against Russia. But as far as having any military and economic clout to bolster Ukrainian capabilities, England doesn't have it. They're broke.
How about Germany, the new government in Germany? How about France? Macron is asking for more nukes. And what's so strange, Larry, recently you see bilateral, trilateral sort of coalitions, and they want to work with each other. Are they so much disappointed with NATO? That's why they're doing this, or they're trying to do everything in order to distract the Trump administration from whatever they're doing with Russia?
Well, let's first be clear what's going on in each of these countries. In Germany, in France, and England, there is not a single majority party in either country. There are parties that have a plurality, but what we're talking about is less than 50% support. And we saw this in the German election. AfD, people going, "Hey, boy, they were successful. They got 20% of the vote." That means 80% of the people voted for somebody else. I wouldn't get too excited about that. But, in Germany, there is a lack of political cohesion and certainty about what is it that we're trying to do. We're trying to defeat Russia. Good luck with that. As opposed to, in World War II, we're going to defeat the Nazis. Okay. And to do that, we've got to take back North Africa. We've got to land in Normandy. We've got to hook up with the Russians. And we got to provide Russians with enough support that they can stay in the fight. Okay, clear objectives. We don't have those now. There are no clear objectives. It's just, it's almost, I get the impression it's being made up as they go along.
Yeah. Earlier today, I talked with Professor Ted Postel. He's there in Germany and talking with the German officials, German people, in terms of the threat of nuclear weapons to put them in Germany. Do you think that Donald Trump, we know that the Biden administration wanted to send missiles to Germany, to put them in Germany. What is the position of the Trump administration? Do they want to do that? Is that acceptable for the new government in Germany, or they're asking for that?
Well, up to this point, I'd say no. The Trump administration is not in favor and won't do it. But, given their complete turnaround on Gaza and Yemen, they very well could do it. I wouldn't surprise me at all. Trump likes to be unpredictable. This is just crazy. This is irresponsible. But they're going to do it. So they've got the real, he'll act out. The problem in Germany is, they're so fragmented. You don't have any majority view supporting the policy. And yet here's Merz channeling his inner Hermann Goering, on the one hand, decoupling debt, German debt, from expenditures. And he's pushing ahead to get a lot of military expenditure going in Germany. Well, again, you got to look at it from the Russians. The Russians are sitting there going, these guys they're getting a gun. They're telling me they're going to kill me. And we see them getting a gun and buying ammunition. We got to assume that they're going to follow through on the threat. We're going to have to deal with it. It'd be no different than if you had a neighbor across the street, and the neighbor, every time he saw you, says, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your family. And the first chance I get. Well, do you just ignore that and say, have a nice day as you drive to work? No. Call the police. And then you get yourself a gun and you make sure that you're armed and ready to defend yourself. That's what Russia is going to do. Russia is going to continue to expand its army because it said, we got to be prepared to fight Germany and France and England. Those three all share a history of having attacked Russia previously. Napoleon in 1812, Germany and England and France in the Crimea War in 1854, Germany in 1917, 1916, and again in 1941. So from Russia's standpoint, they got a history with those three countries, and it ain't good.
How about the history on the part of the Europeans? They're talking about they have to be prepared for a Russian attack. Is that legitimate? Does it have anything to do with the reality of Russia today?
Last time I think the Russians attacked into Europe, you go back to World War II, that was attacks into Europe to driving out the Nazis. Prior to that, there had been, they marched in 1815, I believe, all the way to Paris. But, they ended up giving it back. So Russia has not been an imperial power in Europe. In fact, they've always been sort of the redheaded stepchild. They want to get into the club, the European club, and be part and parcel of that. But Europeans don't want them. They go, oh, those stinky Russians. They keep them away from us. Sad.
It seems that Macron is and together with the United Kingdom, they're backing down on their proposal to send peacekeepers, German, I don't know, French and British peacekeepers to Ukraine.
I think it was French, British, and Denmark. No Germans.
No. And they're talking about UN being responsible for that. We have, by the way, Larry, we have the same situation in Cyprus. We have the North Cyprus, South Cyprus. I did my master's degree there. I know how does it work. It just worked totally amazing the way that it works. Is that possible for the UN to provide the same sort of, I don't know, buffer zone?
No, impossible. Not going to happen. Russia's not going to reach any kind of agreement unless it entails an elimination of the military capability of Ukraine. Ukraine can have border police. They can have armored cars. They can have sidearms. They can have rifles. They're not going to get mortars. They're not going to get artillery rounds. They're certainly as hell not going to get large drones to be used to attack inside Russia. They're going to end Ukraine in that way. Now, Ukraine's choice is end now and keep hold of Odessa, or keep fighting and wind up losing all of their territory and along the Dnieper, all the way down to Odessa. Their choice.
Is the situation in the Kursk region getting to the normality, is under the control of Russians totally, or
I think almost completely under the control. There are still a few pockets here and there, but that's where Russia has once again proven that it's not guided by a Western timeline or deadline. Russia's pursuing things in its own timeline, own schedule. So West just, instead of trying to change the Russians or accuse them of, oh, they're weak or they're stupid or whatever, because they haven't, accomplished what we think we would have accomplished, except, it's rich for any U.S. general that fought in Afghanistan to go on and talk about what the Russians ought to do in 2 years, when hell, they had 18 years and couldn't accomplish it. Please, we don't have any room to talk.
Don't you think that would make a problem for the Trump administration, because they want to put an end to the conflict as soon as possible, as we know, as they were talking about it. But the attitude on the part of Russians is totally different. And they're so patient. They're doing the way they want to do. And Donald Trump says that everything is going well, but we know on the part of Russians, they're not that much satisfied with the way that Donald Trump is proposing.
Yeah. It looks like you froze there, my friend. Okay, you're back.
No.
The Trump administration, they're making a lot of false assumptions about Russia. They assume that Russia's economy is weak and that all they need to do is put a little more pressure on it and Russia will cave. No, that's not true. then they assume that the Russian military is weak and incompetent. Just, oh look, they haven't been able to take this territory despite, it's been 3 years. And again, they come back and say, hey, Americans, we couldn't control Iraq for 15 years. We couldn't control and conquer Afghanistan. And for God's sake, the Afghanis didn't have tanks and mortars and artillery and Western supplied intelligence. Ukraine does, and despite that, the Russians continue to advance. So it's just, it is this visceral hatred of Russia. I think it's for no other reason. Really, at root, they hate Russia because it's a devoutly Christian. This is almost what I'd call demonic. That Russia is feared because it upholds traditional values and is grounded in a religious faith.
How does Russia sees Odessa and Nikolaev today as we talk? How important is that for Russia?
Well, historically, Novorossiya includes Odessa and Nikolaev. I think Russia will ultimately take it, but they're not obsessed with it. But they'll take it in its own due time. Maybe by the end of 2025, we'll see. Because there certainly is no sign that Zelensky and company are sincere about a serious negotiation to bring an end to this.
Larry, you talk about Zelensky. Who's Zelensky? Who's right now with what's going on with Ukraine, with the attack on Russia, their own attack, then right after the talks, they're attacking Russia. Who's Zelensky? Who's running the show?
Well, I don't know specifically. Zelensky's clearly playing a role, but I think the combination of the organized crime elements, which dominate in Ukraine, and coupled with these radical Bandera followers who espouse a form of Nazism, they're the ones I believe that are calling the shots, and Zelensky's just the public face for them.
Do you think we're gonna have the same sort of talks in 2026?
No, actually, I think we'll be talking about something else, about how Russia, gets full control of Ukraine. I don't see Ukraine remaining intact as it is now through the end of this year. I think there'll be some very dramatic changes that'll make it possible for real negotiations between Trump and Putin.
You mean the political changes in the western part of Ukraine as well? Or maybe, I don't know, the western part of Ukraine fracturing and dividing in, I don't know.
Well,
how is that? Is Russia interested in that? Is Russia comfortable with that?
Russia is going to get control of Novorossiya, which basically is the territory all along the Dnieper River, on both the east and west banks of the river, all the way down to Odessa and Nikolaev. So, they're going to do it because they value it as Russia, and they recognize the West is not to be trusted.
What Romania, Hungary, if they divide the western part of Ukraine, being part of Romania, for instance, they're going to put the NATO weapons in that region. Is that okay with Russia and the administration and the Putin administration?
No, I mean, it's no more acceptable than it was if Russia was going to put ballistic missile systems into Cuba. Same thing, right?
Yeah. I don't see that would be beneficial for Russia to divide the western part of Ukraine in, I don't know, with various ethnicities.
Well, what's interesting is I talked to an American who served with the U.S. Army 14 years. He was in West Point, graduated class of 74. And his grandparents were Russian. And one of them came out of Galicia. Now, Galicia, as I recall, was somewhere along the border of Romania and Hungary. It's in western Ukraine. And this grandfather of John, his name is John, John said that anybody who accused his grandfather of being Ukrainian got an earful. The old man said, "No, man, I'm Russian." So the point is that this area that is there in western Ukraine still filled with all of these different ethnic groups. It's a real touchy subject, and it's not going to be easily settled.
Yeah. And Larry, do you see if we can achieve, if we continue to be optimistic about the conflict in Ukraine and they can achieve something by the end of this year, is that going to influence the situation in the Middle East? Is that going to improve the position of Russia as a mediator between the United States and Iran, between considering what's going on in the Middle East?
Yeah, I do see Russia here, let's say in the next 4 or 5 weeks, trying to insert itself to persuade the United States to give peace a chance, to let Russia broker the peace and try to work out a negotiated settlement with Iran. But I don't know if the Trump administration will listen to reason, because again, they're so beholden to the Zionist lobby that they're doing the bid of the Zionists without any regards for what does this mean for U.S. security? What does it mean for regional peace? Trump has got it, he's got it in his mind that all we need to do is just use force against Iran and we'll bring them under control. I think that's crazy.
Do you think that
Go ahead.
Do you think that the Zionist lobby in the United States would benefit from the continuation of the conflict in Ukraine?
Yes. Yeah. I believe that. And there again, what an irony. Here you got the state of Israel, whose really primary reason for existence is because of the Holocaust carried out by Nazis. And and then what does Israel do? It aligns itself with political forces in Ukraine that are ideological descendants of the very Nazis that were stuffing Jews into gas chambers. It makes no sense. But, who said there's ideological consistency with regards to these matters?
Because it seems to me that they're feeling that as much as Russia getting out of the conflict in Ukraine, they're going to be much more involved in the Middle East. That's why they prefer to let Russia, the war in Ukraine keep going and continuing. And that's why they're trying to manipulate this situation. That would be beneficial to them. Do you think that has some sort of reality?
Yeah. No, I do. Russia has a sincere desire to seek a negotiated settlement that will end the conflict. But the part of their ending the conflict is all this Western aid that continues to flow into Ukraine. It's got to be stopped. Cut it out. As long as you continue to provide a firearm and ammunition to a criminal, and that criminal is going out robbing houses and shooting people on the sidewalks, well, you're as responsible as the guys pulling the trigger. That has to stop. And that is one message that I think both Putin and Lavrov consistently present to the United States.
Larry, here is the article in the Telegraph yesterday. It says that one Trident submarine could incinerate 40 Russian cities. And why Putin should fear Britain nuclear arsenal? And they're talking about the Britain just hitting Russian cities. And
Well,
are
yeah,
they
I mean,
how in the middle of what's going on in considering what's going on in Ukraine and talking this way in the Telegraph, which we know how close they are to the government, to the British government. What is the message that they're trying to send to Russia by these sort of articles?
well, I think the message they're sending is we want to die. Come kill us. Now, the reality is they think they're intimidating Russia. You know, oh, we're bad, man. We got nukes and we're going to use them against you. All Russia would say is great. We've got an S-550 air defense system that can shoot your nukes out of the sky. What do you have to stop us? Nothing. So if England pursues this, follows through on it, it's signing its own death warrant. Ridiculous.
I think that there is a severe need of a comprehensive study in Europe to understand what's going on with Europe and how did they end up with these politicians who are totally pro-war, pro expanding the conflict.
It's like a collection of raggedy ass toy poodles, you know, elderly, the tiny little dogs with mangy hair. They just, you know, they're powerless. They make a lot of noise. They create a mess, but ultimately they're limited in what they could do. You know, they don't have a lot of power.
Larry, just to wrap up this session, when you look at the way, yes, we've learned, here is the map that shows the American intelligence manned aircraft on the Crimea gathering intelligence, while the Trump administration is talking about preparing for a ceasefire and we're getting closer. This is the first time they're using this sort of airplanes to gather information.
No, it's not. It's not the first time. Well, they've been using them all along. So, but the point you're making is they're using them. Why? You're saying that you're trying to reach a peace agreement and you keep using the damn ISR? Stop it. Sorry to interrupt your question, but I just wanted to correct that.
There is no honesty on the behavior on the part of the Trump administration. How Putin can
dude, I hope you weren't holding
just
your breath.
playing around with.
I'm gonna hold my breath till they tell the truth. Oh my God, you'd be dead.
Larry, but this is not the case when it comes to the relationship between Russia and China, Russia and Iran, Russia and other countries who are close to Russia.
What can I tell you? That, you know, the traditional narrative in the West about how evil Russia is, how evil China is, how evil Iran is, you know, it really is like that movie Angel Heart with Mickey Rourke. I don't know if you ever saw it, but he was he was hired by a guy called Lucifer, and he's supposed to look for this murderer, and everywhere he goes, man, bodies are turning up. And it's only at the very end of the movie that he discovers he's the killer. He's the one that's been doing all the murdering. That's the United States. We keep looking at, oh, Russia's an imperialist. China's an imperialist. Really? How many, you know, I've said this several times on your show. How many countries has China invaded in the last 50 years? One. It wasn't even much of an invasion because they were intervening in a war between Vietnam and Cambodia, and they're coming in on behalf of Cambodia. So if you're gonna write the book on Chinese military conquests in the 20th century, you're a real short book. You know, 1 chapter, maybe 2 chapters. Yeah, United States meddling in foreign affairs of other countries. Good God, take war and peace and you know, and combine it with the works of Dostoevsky, all of a sudden, my God, you got a huge volume. Because it's not Russia or China that are out invading other countries. It's not Russia and China that are out building military bases overseas on the the borders of countries. It's us. God, we're doing it. It's disgusting.
And Donald Trump asked, "What do they hate us? What's the problem?"
Yeah. Because we keep creating a threat. We keep creating a threat.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
No, well, the pleasure is mine, being beat up by you verbally for an hour. No, hey, you've done some real good work this week. I thought that the program with Ray McGovern and John Helmer was particularly insightful. So well done, young man. Well done.
Thank you. See you
All
soon,
right.
Larry.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
so talk to you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.